The first thing I recommend is just going through and reading the script. Don't get too caught up with analyzing it. Just read it, enjoy it, just like how you would enjoy watching the movie or the show. And then go and watch that actual episode or movie and kind of take note in your mind of anything that stands out to you. The next thing you're going to want to do is go back to your script to start the analysis, which we're going to jump into now. Because I'm interested in writing sitcoms, I've decided to pick the pilot script for one of my favorite shows, which is The Last Man on Earth. This is the pilot, Alive in Tucson, written by Will Forte. And the first thing that I want to do is go through and figure out the major structure sort of points of the script. So I usually like to highlight, the cold open and act one and so on and so forth. Of course, since this is a sitcom, this is already written out, which is pretty helpful. But in addition to writing out those act breaks, I would also figure out where's the midpoint of the story, where's the crisis point or the lowest point for the character, and then also where's the resolution. And once I've sort of figured that out and highlighted those and made some notes about them maybe, I would start looking at the character introduction. And for the sake of this video, we're really going to focus on these first few pages. So the one thing that really stood out to me about this character's intro, Phil, is that you don't actually see him until near the very end of the cold open. But other than that, you don't really see him at all. And even then, you don't really get a good look at his face. You see this bus driving around, you hear him talking, and then he makes this big sign at the end. But I would go ahead and highlight his character intro here. So it says, we see the driver of the bus for the first time. Phil Miller, 40s, beard. It's fairly nondescript, but it doesn't really take anything away because you get a good sense of his character before then, just through these little jokes where he's driving around in this bus in the apocalypse, calling out to different people. So it's kind of an interesting way to introduce a character. So the next thing that I would do after looking at those character introductions is I would try to figure out a little bit more about the world and what's going on. So I would notice, this is pretty straight up and plain in this particular script, but it says the year 2020, 1 year after the virus. And it's just very clear that, we're sort of in this apocalyptic setting. Absolutely no signs of life, it says. He's driving all across the country, lifeless street, empty shopping mall, no signs of life. The bus, it stops right in the middle of the highway. The bus kind of shows, there's no reason to worry about traffic or something. It seems like a small detail, but all of this kind of adds up. And then you kind of get this very clear, it dawns on Phil that he's almost certainly the last living being on the face of the earth. So now that we kind of have a good sense of, who the character is, we see what has happened in the world, the kind of world that we're in, and all of this is just in the first couple of pages. Then the next thing I like to look out for is maybe a little bit more about, what the conflict is going to be, which, you'll see everything is kind of working together. So it starts to become very clear what the issue is. But this is basically, what the character wants, and sort of the obstacle that's in the way. So in this case, Phil is trying to find people, and that sort of points back to, this map where he's looking through all over the US to see if he can find anybody. The last thing I really like to look at is dialogue that really tells you a lot about the character, the tone of the story. So in this case, there isn't a ton of dialogue in this cold open, but we do see some little bits where Phil is, on the speakerphone calling out to see if anybody's there. And the way he does it is pretty hilarious, and it also kind of shows that he's, not the smartest guy in the world per se, but he's trying to find people, whoever he can find, regardless of what language they may speak. But his tactics aren't the best. Still, it's kind of a interesting way to realize that he's kind of childish, this character, and that is really important as you see the rest of the story play out. But basically, that's just kind of all the steps that I would sort of do just to start out. There may be more things that you kind of look for when you're reading a script, and I'd love to hear about those in the comments. I would use these same tactics and apply them throughout the rest of the script. And you start to see how all these different elements work together at the same time. And it just can be really helpful. But once I finish this analysis, I usually like to actually go back and watch the episode again and try to kind of see those things that I highlighted and kind of how they work on screen. And you do this enough times and some stuff starts to sink in and you can start using some of these tools in your own work. And then I just do this same kind of thing for a bunch of other scripts as well, and particularly the ones that I enjoy, and then also ones that, I might not like or might not think are the greatest shows. But yeah, that's pretty much everything with this script analysis. So thank you so much for watching.